My name is Michelle Lavoie. I'm the director of PICUM, which is the Platform for International Cooperation on Undocumented Migrants. So criminalization of migration has many different forms. What we are looking at in the session today are situations such as detention, detention of children. This is a worldwide practice, even though we have many UN recommendations by different bodies, different procedures to end the detention of children. It still continues. So we will be looking at alternatives to detention, really how are states developing practices to remove people from closed detention centers and insert them into a community-based setting where they can follow a case management approach. If we look at the issue of alternatives to detention, this is actually a very interesting area because it's been civil society defined many years ago as really an initiative from civil society organizations that had been working with people who had been detained, but really thinking how can we start trying to change some of the discourse around return and on detention to find ways to really get people out of these detention centers. And so there's been a lot of activity, pilot projects that have been undertaken in a number of countries globally to try to look at different models of alternatives to detention. And in some contexts, this is also very much supported by local authorities. Cities, for example, have been key actors. So this is also very interesting when we think about who is actually developing more progressive policies, more interesting examples of good practices. It's not only civil society, but sometimes it's also through these partnerships with local authorities. We're also looking at the situation of people who receive orders to leave the country, so a return order. How are those procedures occurring? How are they developing? Including the forced return or deportation of people, including children. Many governments actually want to increase their quota of people who can be returned, but this actually poses really tricky questions. Operations of return are not easy to monitor, so some of it is done in ways that civil society cannot get access, especially when there are deportation flights. Criminalization of migration also encompasses people who provide assistance to migrants. So whether they're giving them water in the desert, whether they're trying to rescue them on boats that are sinking at sea, whether they might be also inland and they're giving them shelter, whether they might be transporting them in their car because they might be in a mountainous region suffering from cold. So all these forms are humanitarian assistance to migrants. And there's a very worrying trend in which states are actually prosecuting individuals for doing this humanitarian assistance. Those policies are also failing if people who are providing something which is very clear-cut, such as humanitarian assistance, are being targeted, are being considered as potential smugglers. And I would say a really big issue in criminalization of migration is narratives. How is the policy discourse contributing to a very negative stereotyping of migrants? How is our own vocabulary contributing to that? So for example, we constantly hear of the word illegal migrant, whereas we should be using words such as irregular migrant or undocumented child or undocumented person. Another area which we're also exploring as civil society is what to do with children when they are with a family member. How can this whole situation be examined to look at durable solutions for children? So we need to be very focused and think where can we make advances and with whom can we work? And also in the implementation of the Global Compact on Migration, because the issue of criminalization of migration is, as it's a cross-cutting issue, it actually touches upon so many different objectives of the Global Compact on Migration. Where can we advance in some of these partnerships? Which actors have we identified as crucial to be working with civil society in advancing some of these models that decriminalize migrants?